most of his life, Sean Connery's public image remained almost impossible to crack. He was guarded, commanding, and deeply private about the parts of his life that existed outside the spotlight. His family stayed quiet. The people around him stayed quiet. And so the legend remained largely intact, right up until his death. Then his children spoke. What they revealed about the man they actually knew, behind the fame, the persona, and the carefully maintained silence, is the kind of truth that only surfaces when there's nothing left to protect. The career that never happened. Sean Connery's story began in a small working-class neighborhood in Edinburgh, Scotland, where every penny mattered. His father worked long hours as a factory worker and truck driver, while his mother cleaned houses to help keep food on the table. Life wasn't easy, and from a young age, Connery understood that if the family was going to get by, everyone had to do their part. So, before he had even turned 16, he was already delivering milk across the streets of Edinburgh in the early hours of the morning. It was hard work, but it taught him discipline. More importantly, it marked the beginning of a lifetime of hustling. Sean Connery never expected success to come looking for him. If he wanted something, he would have to earn it. But even with that mindset, it would take years before he discovered where he truly belonged. Like many teenagers, Connery also had a wild side. Years later, he openly admitted that he lost his virginity at just 14 years old to an older woman serving in the Auxiliary Territorial Service, the women's branch of the British Army during World War II. It was an experience he never forgot, and as unusual as it sounds, it would become just one more chapter in the colorful life he was already beginning to build. When World War II was still underway, Connery was too young to enlist, but the moment he turned 16, he signed up for the Royal Navy without hesitation. He embraced military life almost immediately, even getting 2 tattoos, one honoring his family and another proudly declaring Scotland forever. Most teenagers are still trying to figure out who they are. Connery, meanwhile, was already 6'2", covered in tattoos, and carrying himself with the confidence of a grown man. He trained at the Navy's gunnery school and served on an anti-aircraft crew, throwing himself completely into military life. For 3 years, it looked as though the Navy would be his future. Then everything changed overnight. A painful duodenal ulcer forced doctors to discharge him on medical grounds, cutting his military career short before it had really begun. Still only a teenager, Connery suddenly found himself back where he had started, with no clear direction and no idea what came next. Back in Edinburgh, he took whatever work he could find. One day he was driving trucks. Another day he was working as a lifeguard. He polished coffins for extra money and even modeled for students at a local art school. It was hardly a glamorous life, but Connery wasn't afraid of hard work. Around that same time, he became obsessed with bodybuilding. He spent nearly every spare hour in the gym, transforming himself into an impressive physical specimen and eventually entering bodybuilding competitions. It looked like another possible career path, but there was one problem. Unlike many of the American bodybuilders he competed against, Connery refused to give up football. Growing up in Scotland, the sport was part of who he was. He played for several local clubs, and his talent soon caught the attention of someone very important. Then came an opportunity that most young men could only dream about. At just 23 years old, Connery received an offer to join Manchester United. For a working-class kid from Edinburgh, it was the chance of a lifetime. Playing for one of Britain's biggest clubs promised fame, financial security, and a future most people could only imagine. At first, he was thrilled, but the excitement slowly gave way to doubt. Connery looked beyond the glamour and thought about the future. Football careers were short. Most players reached their peak before turning 30, and many struggled once their playing days ended. Rather than chase a career that might only last a few years, he made one of the hardest decisions of his life and turned Manchester United down. Thankfully, another door had already started to open. While competing in bodybuilding contests, a friend mentioned that a local production of South Pacific was holding open auditions. Connery decided he had nothing to lose by trying out. He landed a small role as a chorus member, and over the course of the production, he steadily earned larger parts. Somewhere along the way, a realization hit him. For the first time, acting didn't feel like a hobby. It felt like a real future. Of course, finding that dream was one thing. Turning it into a career would prove far more difficult. South Pacific gave Connery something he had rarely experienced before: steady work. It also introduced him to a whole new world of actors, performers, and creative people. Better yet, it introduced him to someone who quickly became the center of his life. Her name was Carol Soppel. The two fell deeply in love, but their relationship faced an obstacle neither of them could overcome. Carol came from a Jewish family, and her relatives strongly disapproved of her relationship with Connery. They pressured him to stay away, and eventually the romance came to a painful end. It was another reminder that even as his acting career slowly moved forward, life had a way of pulling the rug out from under him. Still, heartbreak would soon be the least of his worries. One decision changed his destiny. Growing up in Edinburgh had taught Connery how to handle himself, but one night would cement his reputation across the city. It started inside a local pool hall when members of the feared Valdor gang tried to steal his jacket. Connery refused to hand it over. The gang backed off, but they weren't finished. As he walked home later that night, 6 of them quietly followed him through the dark streets, convinced they had found an easy victim. They had badly underestimated him. Instead of running, Connery turned to face them. One by one, he fought off the attackers until every single one of them was down. By the time the confrontation ended, word spread quickly. Rather than making an enemy of the gang, he had earned their respect, gaining a reputation as one of Edinburgh's toughest men. But there was another side to Sean Connery that few people saw. Away from the streets, he spent countless hours reading Shakespeare, Ibsen, Tolstoy, and Proust. He wanted more than action roles or working-class stereotypes. He wanted to become a serious actor. He even took elocution lessons, hoping to soften his thick Edinburgh accent and broaden the types of roles he could play. Despite all that effort, success remained frustratingly out of reach. Throughout the 1950s, Connery survived by taking almost any job he could find. He appeared in stage plays, accepted tiny television roles, picked up small film parts, and even babysat to pay the bills. Slowly but surely, casting directors began noticing his rugged appearance and natural toughness, often hiring him to play truck drivers, boxers, soldiers, and other hard-edged characters. Then at last, the opportunity he had been waiting for arrived. Connery landed a role opposite Hollywood star Lana Turner in Another Time, Another Place. It was easily the biggest project of his career, but behind the scenes, the production almost turned into a crime story. While filming in England, Connery offered to show Turner around London. It was an innocent gesture, but her boyfriend, American mobster Johnny Stompanato, became convinced the two were having an affair. Furious, he flew all the way from Los Angeles to confront them. Things escalated quickly. During the confrontation, Stompanato pulled a gun on Connery. It was a decision he immediately regretted. Connery reacted instantly, disarming the mobster and knocking him to the ground before anyone could get hurt. Producers wasted no time banning Stompanato from the film set, and Scotland Yard soon escorted him to the airport, where British authorities deported him from the country. It was yet another unbelievable story that added to Connery's growing reputation as someone who simply refused to be intimidated. Despite that rugged image, not every woman was immediately swept off her feet. When photographer Julie Hamilton first met Connery, she wasn't impressed at all. In fact, she later admitted she found him rather rough and even a little off-putting. Then everything changed with one unexpected moment. She saw him wearing a traditional Scottish kilt. Suddenly, the man she had dismissed looked completely different. Hamilton later described him as the most handsome man she had ever seen, and before long, the two were inseparable. They moved into a small apartment together in London, met each other's families, and supported one another through the struggles of everyday life. Hamilton stood by Connery as he chased acting jobs, believing in him long before the rest of the world did. Then their relationship faced its greatest test. In 1960, Hamilton was diagnosed with tuberculosis, a disease that could be life-threatening at the time. Just as she became seriously ill, Connery received an extraordinary offer. He had been approached for a major role alongside Charlton Heston in the epic film El Cid. It was exactly the kind of opportunity every struggling actor dreamed about. But instead of chasing the career boost, Connery made a remarkable decision. He turned the role down so he could stay home and care for Hamilton during her recovery. Fortunately, the sacrifice didn't destroy his career. The studio later gave him another opportunity, proving that sometimes doing the right thing doesn't always come at the cost people expect. For a while, it looked as though Connery and Hamilton would spend the rest of their lives together. Then, almost without warning, everything fell apart. One evening, while the couple was relaxing in bed, Connery casually remarked on how beautiful actress Diane Salento's eyes were. At the time, they were working together on a television production. Hamilton immediately sensed there was more behind the comment. When she confronted him, Connery admitted that his feelings for her had changed. Just like that, the relationship ended. Years later, the two met again by chance. By then, Hamilton was married and had a young son named Jason. Remembering how she had stood by him during the hardest years of his life, Connery made her a heartfelt promise. If he ever had a son of his own, he would name him Jason in her honor. Ironically, his relationship with Diane Salento brought more than romance into his life. It also introduced him to producer Harry Saltzman, who was working tirelessly to bring Ian Fleming's famous spy, James Bond, to movie theaters. Meeting Saltzman was one thing. Convincing everyone that Sean Connery should become James Bond was another challenge entirely. The search for Bond had become a headache for the filmmakers. Ian Fleming had favored established stars like Cary Grant, but Grant was only willing to make one film. The producers wanted someone who could lead an entire franchise. They even organized a nationwide search for the perfect Bond, only to discover that the contest winner simply couldn't act. That left Connery. Knowing he needed to stand out, he came up with an unusual strategy. Instead of trying to look polished and sophisticated, he walked into the audition wearing wrinkled clothes and behaved exactly like himself. He didn't pretend to be refined. He didn't force elegance. He relied on his natural confidence, quiet toughness, and undeniable screen presence. Against all expectations, it worked. The producers saw something nobody else had. They cast Sean Connery as the very first James Bond in Dr. No, making a decision that would not only transform his own life, but forever change the history of cinema. The success that nearly destroyed him. Landing the role of James Bond was only the beginning. Sean Connery had spent years trying to soften his working-class Scottish accent, but once he was cast, the producers pushed him through an intense crash course in charm, manners, and sophistication. They wanted him to become the complete package, a polished gentleman who could be dangerous one second and effortlessly charming the next. It all built toward one unforgettable moment. When Dr. No introduced Bond to audiences, Sylvia Trench asked for his name, and Connery delivered the line that would become one of the most famous introductions in movie history. From that moment on, James Bond belonged to Sean Connery. As Dr. No exploded at the box office, Connery's personal life was changing just as quickly. Not long before the film premiered, Diane Salento finalized her divorce from her first husband. Soon afterward, she discovered she was pregnant, and Connery proposed. With Bond fever already sweeping across Britain, a public wedding would have attracted far too much attention, so the couple quietly planned a secret ceremony in Gibraltar. Even that almost fell apart. Because of political tensions in the region, they traveled separately to avoid attracting attention. But when Salento reached the border, officials found an issue with her passport and detained her. By the time they released her, she had already missed her ferry and came dangerously close to missing the wedding altogether. Thankfully, she made it in time, and the couple married. But it was hardly the peaceful beginning they had imagined. Not long after, they welcomed a son into the world. Connery kept a promise he had once made to his former girlfriend, Julie Hamilton. Years earlier, he had told her that if he ever had a son, he would name him Jason. True to his word, that was exactly what he did. As Connery's career skyrocketed, Diane made a sacrifice of her own. She stepped away from acting to focus on raising Jason and supporting her husband. She even accompanied him to the set of From Russia with Love, the second Bond film, which became an even bigger success than the first. Ironically, Ian Fleming had never been convinced that Connery was right for the role. He had originally preferred Roger Moore, but as the films became massive hits, Fleming completely changed his mind. Before his death in 1964, he even began writing Bond with more of Connery's personality, giving the famous spy a sharper wit and a better sense of humor. Yet, for all the fame Bond brought him, it also became a source of growing frustration. Even before signing the contract, Connery had worried that playing Bond across multiple films would trap him in one role forever. Diane had encouraged him to accept the offer anyway, believing it was too good to refuse. Years later, both of them would question that decision. By 1965, the pressure had begun taking its toll. Diane announced she was leaving Connery and planned to take Jason with her, along with her daughter from her previous marriage. Connery didn't argue. Instead, he quietly packed his belongings and left the family home before she even had the chance. Although they later reunited while he was filming Thunderball, those close to the production said the marriage was hanging by a thread. Their arguments became impossible to ignore, with shouting matches regularly echoing across the set. Things were no better at home. Connery's career continued reaching incredible heights, while Diane's own acting career had stalled. The imbalance created tension, and both struggled with feelings of frustration and competition. They kept trying to save the marriage, but deep down, it was becoming clear that it couldn't last forever. At least professionally, Connery had gained something priceless. The enormous success of the Bond films gave him leverage in Hollywood. For the first time, studios listened to what he wanted. He quickly used that influence to secure a role in Alfred Hitchcock's Marnie, determined to prove he could be far more than just a secret agent. With only 2 Bond films left on his contract, Connery finally believed he was beginning to escape Bond's shadow. Then disaster nearly struck. Long before movie stars regularly performed their own stunts, Connery insisted on doing many of his himself. But during the filming of Thunderball, that determination almost cost him his life. One scene required him to swim through a pool filled with live sharks. Understandably, Connery had concerns. To protect him, the crew installed a large plexiglass barrier that separated him from the sharks. It seemed like the perfect solution until they discovered they didn't have enough plexiglass. A small gap remained. During filming, one of the sharks slipped through the opening and entered the section of the pool where Connery was swimming. The moment he realized what had happened, he scrambled out of the water as fast as he could, narrowly avoiding what could have been a horrific accident. The decision that shocked everyone. By the end of the 1960s, Connery's life looked very different from the way it had begun. He had become one of the biggest movie stars on Earth, but behind the scenes, he was exhausted. Bond no longer excited him, and his marriage was falling apart. Eventually, enough was enough. Before production even began on You Only Live Twice, Connery made his position perfectly clear. He told the studio he was finished with James Bond. The producers immediately began searching for someone new. Not long afterward, Connery and Diane officially separated in February 1971. Whatever sadness came with the breakup, Connery didn't spend much time looking back. He was already focused on what came next. The Bond producers believed they had found their new leading man in George Lazenby, signing him to an ambitious 7-film contract. Instead, everything unraveled almost immediately. Lazenby quit after just 1 movie, leaving the franchise in crisis. That put the producers in an awkward position. The very actor who had fought so hard to escape Bond suddenly became their best option. To almost everyone's surprise, including many close to him, Connery agreed to return for Diamonds Are Forever. Of course, he wasn't coming back cheaply. He negotiated an enormous salary and demanded that the studio finance 2 personal projects after filming wrapped. The producers agreed to every condition. Connery later used much of that massive paycheck to establish a trust fund supporting young Scottish artists, making sure the money benefited far more people than just himself. Once Diamonds Are Forever was behind him, Connery finally enjoyed the freedom he had wanted for years. He worked with acclaimed director Sidney Lumet, starred alongside close friend Michael Caine in The Man Who Would Be King, played Robin Hood in Robin and Marian, and joined the star-studded cast of Murder on the Orient Express. His career had never been more diverse. That didn't mean every gamble paid off. In 1974, Connery starred in the strange science fiction film Zardoz, a movie remembered today almost entirely because of one unforgettable costume, a bright red outfit that has puzzled audiences for decades. According to director John Boorman, Connery accepted the role because work had become surprisingly difficult to find after leaving Bond behind. Critics tore the film apart when it was released, although over time it developed a loyal cult following. By the early 1980s, Connery had become a Hollywood legend. Perhaps enough time had passed for old wounds to heal because he agreed to play James Bond one final time in Never Say Never Again. The title itself came from his wife, who jokingly suggested it after Connery had repeatedly insisted he would never play Bond again. Looking back, he may have wished he had kept that promise. Production quickly descended into chaos. Connery became heavily involved behind the scenes, demanding script changes, choosing writers himself, and stepping in to solve problems whenever the production began falling apart. Then things got even worse. During fight training, martial arts instructor Steven Seagal accidentally broke Connery's wrist. By the time filming ended, Connery had had enough. This time, when he said he was finished with Bond, he meant it. In fact, he stepped away from acting altogether for nearly 2 years. When he finally returned, he reminded everyone exactly why he was considered one of Hollywood's finest actors. His performance in The Untouchables earned him the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor, and shortly afterward, audiences embraced him once again as Professor Henry Jones, the father of Indiana Jones, in The Last Crusade. Once again, Sean Connery was at the very top, but even legends couldn't escape controversy. In 1993, singer-songwriter Lindsay DePaul claimed she had secretly dated Connery while he was married. According to her account, Connery had flirted with her in front of his wife before beginning a relationship that lasted several months. Connery firmly denied the allegations. Soon afterward, Danish journalist Helle Byrne made similar claims, saying they had carried on an affair for nearly a year after meeting during an interview. Once again, Connery denied everything. Through it all, his wife chose not to comment publicly and remained by his side. Just a few years later, another controversy threatened something completely different. Connery had become one of Scotland's strongest supporters of independence from Britain, and his outspoken political views reportedly complicated his chances of receiving a knighthood. His name was passed over in both 1997 and 1998. Still, he refused to change his views. In 2000, persistence finally paid off when Queen Elizabeth II knighted him, officially making him Sir Sean Connery. As the late 1990s rolled into the early 2000s, Connery remained one of Hollywood's most respected stars. Then came the film that would end everything. The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen arrived with enormous expectations, but almost from day one, the production became a nightmare. Connery and director Stephen Norrington constantly clashed, with tensions growing so intense that the two nearly came to blows. The hostility continued long after filming ended. When Norrington failed to attend the film's premiere, a reporter asked Connery where the director was. Without missing a beat, Connery suggested they check the local asylum. It was a brutally sharp remark, but it reflected just how miserable the experience had been. Although he didn't announce his retirement immediately, The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen became his final live-action film. 3 years later, in 2006, Connery officially confirmed he was retiring from acting. Asked why, he didn't hide his feelings. He said he had simply grown tired of dealing with what he saw as the fools running modern Hollywood. After his death, Sean Connery's children revealed the awful truth. Long after Sean Connery had stepped away from Hollywood, an old chapter of his life suddenly returned to the spotlight. In 2006, his first wife, Diane Salento, published her autobiography. Inside, she made serious allegations, claiming that Connery had been physically and emotionally abusive during their marriage. Connery strongly denied those accusations. He said he did not believe violence against women was ever justified under any circumstances. But the controversy didn't stop there. As reporters revisited his past, they uncovered interviews from decades earlier that painted a far more complicated picture. In a 1965 interview, Connery suggested there were situations where hitting a woman was not necessarily wrong. Then, in a 1993 interview with Vanity Fair, he made another controversial remark, saying that some women wanted that kind of confrontation. Those comments sparked widespread criticism and continued to follow him for years, becoming one of the most controversial parts of his legacy. Even decades after one of the most dramatic moments of his career, another unbelievable story refused to fade away. Years earlier, while filming Another Time, Another Place, Connery had famously confronted Lana Turner's boyfriend, mobster Johnny Stompanato, after the gangster pulled a gun on him. That confrontation turned out to be only the beginning. Not long after returning to the United States, Stompanato was fatally stabbed inside Lana Turner's home. Turner's teenage daughter admitted to the killing, saying she had acted to protect her mother. Not everyone accepted that explanation. Powerful Los Angeles mob boss Mickey Cohen became convinced the teenager hadn't acted alone. In his mind, there was another suspect who had both the strength and the motive: Sean Connery. At the time, Connery happened to be in the United States filming a Disney movie. According to later accounts, Cohen was so convinced of Connery's involvement that he allegedly ordered a hit on the actor. Most people would have panicked. Connery didn't. After receiving a threatening phone call while staying at the Roosevelt Hotel, he quietly changed hotels as a precaution. Beyond that, he carried on with his work as though nothing had happened. Eventually, the threat faded. Once legal proceedings surrounding Stompanato's death concluded, Cohen reportedly abandoned any plans for revenge, and Connery continued his career without further incident. It was yet another extraordinary story in a life that already seemed filled with them. Then, decades later, the final chapter quietly arrived. On October 31, 2020, Sean Connery's family and the James Bond producers announced that the legendary actor had passed away peacefully in his sleep at the age of 90. His son, Jason Connery, later shared that his father had been ill for some time before his death. Living in the Bahamas during his final years, Connery spent his last moments surrounded by family at his home in Nassau. Jason said the family was heartbroken, even though they had known this day was coming. Losing him was devastating for those who loved him personally, but it was also a tremendous loss for millions of fans around the world who had admired him for generations.